Hey guys, this is Steve Baker, the Pragmatic Constitutionalist, TPC, however you want to refer to me. I don't care, especially today. I have a guest here. I would normally say I'm excited to have this guest here, but unfortunately today is a day that my opportunity to speak with Mr. Edmund Wright, Edmund Wright, is one of well, it's on an occasion of sadness for some of us, and particularly for I think for Edmund himself. And we're going to get into that in a minute. But I wanted to talk a little bit myself, just for a couple of minutes, about this event that we heard about today, the passing of Rush Limbaugh. And I am not going to whitewash over any of this. We all kind of have our moments when we first learned about Rush, or first heard of Rush the first time, or heard him on the air the first time. And I'll be asking Edmund about that here in a few minutes myself. But mine was in 88 or 89, and it was somebody running into the club that I was managing up in Minneapolis at the time and saying, "Oh my God, have you heard of this guy, Rush something?" And I don't know. And you've got to go listen to him. He thinks and sounds so much like you. It's crazy, so I'm like, well, okay, whatever. So I eventually went over and put him on the dial, and then that was the beginning of a 30 plus year addiction to hearing his voice as often as I could. Being more of the libertarian persuasion myself, there was many occasions that I found myself in disagreement with his analysis or his conclusions about certain topics or issues of the day, but never ever at any time was I not entertained by the radio man himself. So what ended up happening for me was I started becoming very, very, very critical of Limbaugh circa 2015, 2016, as we always refer to the Trump derangement syndrome, and I've always said that the Trump TDS cuts both ways. And I started writing some very critical articles about Limbaugh's take on the candidate to Trump and then into the presidency of Trump. And despite my criticisms and despite the fact that I felt like that Limbaugh had abandoned his normal and typical entertaining format specifically to become the biggest and number one apologist for Donald Trump on the planet, I was incredibly disturbed by his announcement, just over a year ago, that he had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Because whether I agree with Trump or not, with Limbaugh or not, I had this 30 plus year amazing respect for the man. What I don't have is I don't have a personal connection in any way like Edmund does, and which we're about to turn this over to him. But I did want to. I think Chuck. I think we ought to just go ahead and raise our glass here, and to the great one, the great man, and the man behind the golden EIB microphone, and Godspeed, Rush. Rest in peace.
Amen, bro.
So,
took out the good stuff to toast El Rushbo.
Yeah, man.
Just a spectacular life, a spectacular career.
So let me just do a really quick interview. We're not going to go off on any other not interview, a quick introduction rather. We're not going to do anything else tonight except talk about your relationship specifically with Rush Limbaugh and how that developed, how it, we're going to talk about, some of the highlights of that relationship, some key moments that you participated in shaping the national conversation and sometimes the national debate. And then in addition to that, we're going to talk about, I'm going to press you on some of your disappointments in with regards to that relationship, if that's okay, because I think that this is a time to let's just get it all out and let's just talk about it.
Well, we'll see how far the scotch goes on this.
Right. Well, hopefully it goes far enough to get you to open up fully. Honestly, I'm gonna also begin this by saying that you didn't want to do this today. You wanted to have more time to think about it, and more time to process this in your own words. Yeah. And I pressed you and said, no, I want to do this and have this conversation while you are emotional about this, and while you're while you are a little bit I don't know what the term, right, but certainly raw would be a good way of coming at it. So anyway, C. Edmund Wright, writer for American Thinker, Breitbart. He's written a couple of best-selling books. Well, one in particular, WTF. What was it? Karl Rove. And
the establishment lost again.
Right, right, and
which Karl Rove read, by the way, and was not a fan of, but that's a different story.
He loved it, I heard.
Oh yeah.
And so anyway, let's just dive right into this from the very beginning. When was your first exposure? When did you hear Rush Limbaugh the first time?
Before we do that, let me just say that what we're going to talk about as I got involved with the show, which is an amazing set of events that would probably require a lot of adult beverages to believe, but it is true. My involvement was with the show more than with Rush per se, but it's I was never paid, I was never credited, Steve, but it was the calling of my life. It's the most important stuff I've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
It was to be quoted directly by Rush is a great honor. To write words that Rush used as his own was probably even a greater honor. I've had the thrill of both of those, many occasions for 3 years. And it's as inevitable as today was. It's still a shock. I think I'm still in shock. I think you're probably in shock. Cheering up a little, which I didn't expect. But
you called this day over a week ago. You told me because we talk every day. In fact, let's just go ahead and tell everybody you and I are embarking on the co-authorship of a book about the COVID scamdemic, and so we're talking every day right now, and have been for years anyway. But it's been more intense and more frequent of late. And in one of our conversations here just several days ago, you said, "Yeah, he's not coming back. This is it."
And that was based on zero inside information. I just when he missed 2 or 3 days of 1 week, then the weekend, then did not come back for the first couple of days of the next week, I knew that was not planned, and I knew that couldn't be good. I knew that he was already 3 or 4 months into house money. I think the performance he did, I think the final few months of what we've seen with Rush Limbaugh and probably Alex Trebek too on Jeopardy, we've seen two amazing American icons really finish strong. And Rush just a few weeks ago sounded pretty good. His last couple of days, he didn't sound that great, but he really sounded good a lot of times in the last 3 months. And that's just phenomenal.
Yeah. I differed with you on the one thing. I wanted him to do a farewell show. I wanted to hear how he would approach that, but you liked the idea that he just went out being.
I didn't want him to go through the pain of knowing this is my last show. And I didn't want to hear it as a listener,
Yeah.
And obviously I had no control over any of that. Neither did he, as it turned out. But I actually heard Rush the very first week he was on the air. I was in the Greenville, South Carolina area, and one of his first 54 stations was WSPA in Spartanburg, Greenville, Spartanburg, same media market. And it was Tuesday or Wednesday of his first week. And I just knew right then, I just said, this is going to change everything. Now, I had no idea how much it would be. And of course, now we sit here 30 some odd years later. He saved first AM radio, which was a dying medium. Then he saved FM radio, which was a dying medium. and he almost saved Donald Trump's second term, which would have been a spectacular swan song. And you know, so his passing is just really the topper of what's been I think a horrible few months for anyone who loves the country, loves liberty, loves freedom, loves free speech, and loves the happy warrior type conservative.
Well,
that's what Rush was.
I unfortunately began my new year with a brand new hashtag says, and you thought 2020 was bad. This has not been a good start to the year.
No, and I think after November 5th or 6th went by and it didn't look like we were going to be able to turn that tide, I think we knew that was probably going to be the case.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly can hope 2021 turns around. I don't see anything, on the horizon that's going to do it. Certainly nothing that happened today, makes you feel any better about it.
No.
But it's really interesting going back to listening to him that first day, and then this incredible series of unbelievable events that happened between 2008 and 2011. Sometimes I sit back and I like, did that really happen? But Steve, you were one of 3 or 4 front row witnesses to it. It did happen.
Yeah.
And I was in a position to literally help shape the national conversation. I mean, Rush's show was center court of conservative thought, and
right.
It was
for
30. Yeah.
Let's go to the beginning then of that relationship. Lead us up into the 2008 sequence of events that got you into the position where you were literally feeding lines that was being read by Rush over the air.
Yeah, and like I said, that's true. I know it's true. There's proof it's true. It's just a handful of people know it's true, and most people would think we're crazy, but obviously we lived it, so we know it. I had been so involved in business that I had laid my political writing down from about 96 into 2008. 2008, I mean, I was still very involved politically, from a standpoint of observer during that time. And had been involved in a presidential campaign in 92 and some other things in the early 90s after that, and then was kind of dormant for a while. But Rush was quoting American Thinker a lot. And so I just knew, I just had this stupid notion that, I think exactly like this guy. And I don't mean just like most of his listeners think like him. I mean, this was a scary, the Frankenstein cap goes from brain to brain kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just scary. And I said, if he could ever read my stuff, he'd like it. I just had that stupid notion, arrogant notion, say what you will. But I started submitting to American Thinker specifically because I wanted to get on Rush's show. Just to be, just for him to read a Edmund Wright column. And,
okay. Now, out of the hundreds of columnists that have written and write for American Thinker, what made you think you could break through that noise and catch his attention?
Steve, there were 2 things. First of all, when it comes to political writing, I don't lack for confidence. He said, understatement. I just knew that he would like the way I thought. He would like my sense of humor. He would like my unusual, counterintuitive analogies.
But how did you catch his attention? Was it a title of an article, or what?
Well, I don't really.
I
don't really know that. I do know that it took me 3 or 4 articles to get past Thomas, the editor of American Thinker, and I'm thinking, man, I was communication director for North Carolina Bush Quail. Who the hell are you, Thomas, editing me out? Publish my stuff.
Right.
I read my stuff. I read your stuff. I'm good enough to be published in American Thinker. Finally, he published one on March 14th, 2008. And the title was something like Why Jeremiah Wright Matters. And it was about the Obama campaign and Jeremiah Wright. And there was a discussion that his pastor's not relevant. And I thought it was very relevant because Obama sought out Jeremiah Wright's church, which is a Black liberation theology church. for the specific purpose of developing black street cred in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Because here Obama, who's somewhat light-skinned anyway, came from a background of Hawaii, Kansas, and Harvard. I mean, that's, not really street, right? Okay.
Right.
So he needed to get more street, and Jeremiah Wright was how he got street. He chose Jeremiah Wright to get more street cred, more black street cred. So Rush led off the show, his opening monologue on March 14th, 2008, talking about C. Edmund Wright's black street cred theory about Barack Obama and Jeremiah Wright. And it was the primary topic of his opening monologue. And I just about wrecked the car when I'm hearing it driving down Glenwood Avenue in Raleigh. And that was my first published article, American Thinker. It's my first time on Rush's show, and it led to a series of amazing events that then ended up.
So wait a minute. So you're saying the very first time you were published on American Thinker, Rush saw it?
With his opening monologue, yes.
Unbelievable. Wow.
And now, Thomas Lifeson, the editor, had emailed me and said, and I don't know what, I guess he had some indication with the person that he dealt with, who I think I'll leave her name out of this for now.
Mm-hmm.
But she was his contact, became my contact to the show. And Thomas had some indication that Rush really liked it. And I had no idea, of course, it'd be opening monologue. And, the way Rush kind of does his show, he just sort of jumps in and he has no idea what he's going to go with first. But he touched base on a Bush economic speech for a couple minutes, and he jumped right into C. Edmund Wright's black street cred theory.
Wow. All right. So
then, by the way, caveat, that was a Friday. Fox News Sunday talked about Rush Limbaugh's black street cred theory. So, hey, wait a minute. That wasn't his theory. But
I of course remember that happening. I did not recall that it was your very first American Thinker article, but then that actually became kind of it started happening a lot.
It started happening a lot. Rush would pick up a lot of my stuff. Obviously, I gained a lot of cred with American Thinkers editors with that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I gained cred with the contact who fed some information to the show, and got to where Rush clearly remembered the name. So yeah, it from March into say September-ish 2008. Yeah, he used a good number of C. Edmund Wright of American Thinker articles.
But of the handful of times that you actually called into the show, you were never C. Edmund Wright, were you?
No, and I actually never got into the show as a caller. Never called very much after he started doing that. Okay. Never could get in when I did. Yeah, I'd actually gotten in 6 or 8 times over the years, but it was before any of this.
Okay, so since he started actually referencing your articles in the American Thinker, you stopped calling in.
It stopped calling in much, and when I did, I never got in.
Yeah. Well, it's
never even got Bo on the phone. So
toughest phone call to make in America for sure.
No doubt. I'm fortunate I got in a handful of times when I did.
So
back when the show was smaller, so the law of large numbers was not quite as daunting.
Right. Now we don't have to get into the specifics of who made the direct connection, but I will go ahead and say that this is somebody that Limbaugh used to refer to on the air for years as his North Carolina mistress.
That is correct.
Yes. And so the North Carolina mistress, when you would hear Limbaugh refer to her, was someone that was in fact feeding him data, more or less show prep is what it was. Correct?
It was show prep. Yes.
Okay. All right. You take it from there and you reveal as much of that connection as you want to or don't want to. And then, but let's make sure we get you now to the position where Limbaugh is no longer reading American Thinker articles, but he's reading your words as though he's speaking them himself. Because that's probably the most that's the most unknown detail about Limbaugh is he look, as as confident as you are in your own writing, one of Limbaugh's, part of his shtick was that he, had half his brain tied behind his back and talent on loan from God. And so he was not at a loss for pumping himself up as well, but that was part of his, entertainment shtick. But nevertheless, his other half of his brain was being fed sometimes.
Yeah, I used to joke I was the other half of that brain sometimes. It was interesting as C. Edmund Wright got quoted on American Thinker. Obviously, a lot of conservatives in the Raleigh area listened, as they do everywhere. And I guess through these 6 degrees of separation theory, a friend of mine happened to know who this person was in Raleigh. Now, keep in mind, Rush lives in Florida, and American Thinker's based out of California. And I'm sitting here in Raleigh and had no idea for months that the person who was bringing my work in front of Rush lived about 4 miles from me in Raleigh. So it was happening via.
And you had no idea it was the oft referred to North Carolina mistress.
I put that together later, when I met this person and we got to know each other a little bit, and yes, confirmed that. And by the way, for the record, she was not and was never a mistress. She did grow up with him in Cape Girardeau, and in fact, Rush introduced her to her husband on a blind date. So,
point is, they were lifelong friends, and this was her role. Her role in the entertainment side of the business, right, was to be the mistress. No, I get that.
Yeah. So he actually used to mention her and her husband's name in the 90s occasionally, so-and-so from Raleigh, but that got too much attention to them, so he had to stop doing that. So.
All right. So you finally made the connection, and who first suggested to, did you suggest to her, I want to feed some information, or did she say to you, look, we can do this in a certain way, a certain method. There's a technique he likes to have his show prep presented. How did that even happen? You've never even told me this.
Because first of all, it was none of that. We met, my wife and myself, her and her husband, and delightful couple, by the way. We met at a Mexican restaurant in the Research Triangle, and over numerous bottles of wine, got to the bottom of how all this happened. And she sort of showed me what a prep looked like. And I just started sending it to her. I didn't say I was going to. She didn't say, would you send me? I just started sending it to her.
You just took it upon yourself.
I just took it upon myself, and stuff started ending up on the air.
Okay. So now, because of my relationship with you directly, I had the opportunity to actually see how Rush required that prep to be designed. It was color coded and, indented here and there, and it was set up in a very specific way. So when you said she showed it to you, you saw it and memorized it, or did she?
Well, it was pretty, first of all, the format was pretty simple, and it was basically, size of the font, color of the font, and didn't necessarily have to be exactly right. It was just a general format, and it changed a little bit over the course of 3 years, as what it seemed like he was comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first thing I did was just send her a little smart aleck comment about something I heard on the opening to the Brit Hume show, and Rush led off his show the next day with that comment, and I emailed her. I said, does that comment sound as familiar as I think? And she said, oh yeah. So I thought to myself, okay, it's on now. And I think the first thing that actually got used on the air was Kansas City Star had come out with some stupid column about Obama complaining about being, socialist being a racial term. And so I made fun of the Kansas City Star article saying, something like, wait a minute, socialists are a bunch of dead white guys. How is that a racist slur to Obama to call him a socialist? And he used that, and then just one thing led to another. And then, at some point, not too long after that, you and I talked about it. And you and a friend of mine from South Carolina and my wife and one guy who worked at 106.1 radio who will remain nameless And my kids, that was it. That was the only people who knew what was going on.
Wow. No, see what, and the reason why I can validate this is because, and this happened on more than one occasion. Is,
it got funny, actually.
Right. Edmund would email me in advance of the show the exact prep in the style and the format that Rush required, the what you had submitted that day to the North Carolina mistress. And then Rush would come on, and sure enough, either in his opening monologue or at someplace very near the top, word for word, reading in his voice, but in your words, I've got it right in front of me. It's on my screen. So I'm hearing Rush on the radio. I'm looking on my screen, and there it is. And I got it 15 minutes before he ever even went on the air. So I can validate that these events happened as you're testifying they did.
Yeah. And then it was, and then it got to the point where you would call me or you would email me.
Right.
And you would say, I just heard Rush talk about so-and-so. Please tell me that was your prep.
Yeah.
And it would almost always be correct. You know?
Right.
You got to where you could recognize my prep.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of that has to do with, you and I have spent untold number of hours together, both discussing politics, business, philosophizing, and sharing the what, and the adult beverages, as Rush would say, and so I knew enough about your slight variation on his voice to be able to pick it out when it happened, your particular style. And so I could then do exactly what you said. I would hear Rush say something and I'd go, oh God, that had to be, and I'd shoot you over a text or a email, and you'd, yep, that was mine. And then you'd send it back over and you'd show me exactly what it looked like. I'm like, damn. And then over the years, okay, so
this is true. I know this sounds, people watch and think we're like, no,
right.
I'm sorry, you couldn't make this crap up.
Right. But you actually do have the evidence, because first of all, all right, let's just start here. You have a book. It's probably, I'm trying to get it on the screen here where people can see it. By the way, I'm snowed in Tennessee somewhere, by the way. This is not my normal background, as everybody knows, but I'm literally snowed in. Could not get out of the actual neighborhood that I tried to get out yesterday. I'm like, forget it. And now it's snowing again tonight. So I have seen with my own eyes, your book that's about this thick of all of the show prep that he used. It's incredible.
Well, that wasn't even all of it. That was just a sampling of it. Yeah.
That was just the sample that I've seen.
Yeah.
So anyway,
he used, in 28 months or whatever it was, he used a tremendous amount. And some days it would seem like I did the whole show. Some days hardly anything. It just, that's script writing, ghost writing. That just comes with that territory.
But the point is that if there was ever a reason, legally or otherwise, that you needed to validate the absolute proof of this, and it's not just my testimony and your testimony, two friends getting together and making up a grand tale, that you have the time-stamped, emails of what went out, when it went out, and then obviously his entire history of his show is archived audio. So it's all there. It just has to be compared.
Yeah, I don't foresee any need to do. Yeah, it's all forensically backed up, of course. Right. Not because I did anything. It's just everything was done by email, and once it's out there, it's out there.
Yeah. But all right, so let's jump now to I think let's just go straight to the top. What would you consider to be the number one moment where C. Edmund Wright helped shape the actual national debate or national dialogue, national discussion because of something you fed Rush Limbaugh?
Yeah, well, the most important show prep I did was not my favorite per se. My favorite are some of the funny ones that are freaking hilarious.
Yeah.
And Rush thought was hilarious, and that I could listen to him leading up to it and know that he couldn't wait to get to the punchline, which I had written. That is a trip, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah. We'll get to a couple of those, but let's go to the.
We'll get to a couple of those, and my Fort Hood analogy, which may be my best analogy ever. But the number one thing that I did was, in general, was shift him off of MSNBC and Morning Joe and shift him on to CNBC and Squawk Box. And this is early 2009. Obama's just taken over. CNBC at the time is a fairly conservative network. It's watched by Merrill Lynch brokers and Edward Jones brokers everywhere, and about 9 other people at the time. And I was one of those 9 other people. So I'm watching in February of 2009, I'm watching, and by the way, I'm in Charlotte on a convention. Charlotte, which, as a lot of you know, and some of you may not, is kind of Wall Street South, big banking, big investment area. Mm-hmm. So in 2009, Wall Street South are doing very good for obvious reasons. So I'm in Charlotte in February of 2009 at a convention totally unrelated, to this work. And I'm in my hotel room, and I got to go play convention for my other business because that's what's putting food on the table. But I want to get 1 or 2 show preps off to Susan, just to, oops.
You said the name.
All right, whatever. All right, just want to get 1 or 2 show preps off. And so I watch, and I'm one of the 12 people in the country who's a Rick Santelli fan at the time. No one's heard of Rick Santelli at this time. So Santelli comes on, and he is really, really upset at the Obama threatening to excuse people who are behind on their mortgage, making those who pay their mortgage pay for the delinquent mortgages.
Right.
So Santelli, who is a conservative with strong libertarian leanings and had his little cult following of CNBC viewers, he got on the floor of the Chicago Merc, which is where he normally reports from, sometimes from New York, but he was in Chicago. And he goes on what is now known as his Tea Party rant.
Right. And
it was a little under 5 minutes, about 4:54, I think. And I'm sitting there watching it, and he's getting cheers from the traders in the back. I mean, he owns the audience. And,
any of us that were plugged in at the time remember that, because he is given credit for launching the Tea Party at that moment.
And there are several versions of what launched it, but the one that gives him credit is actually the closest to the correct version for the story I'm just telling. And so he does his rant. He has a couple of great moments in the rant, including the one where he threatens to hold a Chicago Tea Party on Lake Michigan. And I'm sitting there drinking my coffee in the hotel room at the Westin downtown Charlotte. And I just about spit out my coffee at that, at that line. I just knew, man, this is big. This is big. And I could tell the reaction of the traders knew it was big. And so I said, well, CNBC usually takes about 30 or 40 minutes before they put their little video segments up on their website. So I figure, okay, I got to jump in the shower, get ready to go do my, play the convention day in this other business. But after the shower, CNBC will have that posted. I'll be able to go through, break it down, send it to the show prep and see what happens. So I get out and I break it down in the format I do, and I embed the video, and I say at 38 seconds, he says this, and at a minute 48, he says that, and at 2:53, he says that, whatever it is. And then I put in some suggested commentary there, which would be the ghostwriting piece. And then I go and I play convention, and I don't think about it. I don't really have an internet signal all day until about 5 o'clock, and get back to my hotel room. And I got an email back from my show prep on Santelli, and it said, "Have you seen Drudge? Rush sent this to him." Well, so then I go to the Drudge report, and there's red end of the world headlines and the siren going, and
mm-hmm.
CNBC floor trader Santelli threatens Tea Party revolt. Now, Matt Drudge has no idea who Rick Santelli is before this day.
Right.
Rush has never used Rick Santelli before this day. I'm trying to get Rush to use CNBC and get off Morning Joe and that low IQ pablum over there,
Yeah.
Because CNBC was conservative at the time, was doing some good breakdown of Obama's and Pelosi's Marxism. They even had Jim Cramer.
And this was before he banned the use of MSNBC programming.
Yeah, because he was still doing more Morning Joe at the time, but
Right.
Morning Joe is about 40 IQ points short of what I can digest, so I didn't do any Morning Joe. Yeah. But I was big into CNBC. I'm a macroeconomics is just something I'm really interested in. So CNBC spoke to me on that, and I was so I sent a lot of stuff. But anyway. Then I go to Rush's archives for that day, and basically his entire show was on Rick Santelli, and the name of that show, unofficial name of that show, was "The Pulse of the Revolution Has Begun." So, credit me for knowing it was a big moment. Credit Rush and Drudge, the two biggest at that time, the two biggest conservative media people on the planet, for instantly knowing it was a big moment and leading their respective mediums with it. But it was that email picked up by Rush and Drudge that I guess you could say launched the Tea Party movement.
A quick diversion, and you pointed this out earlier today, but I guess we both noticed that when Drudge went live with the announcement of Limbaugh's passing, there was no siren.
I think he did add it later, but
did he? I never saw it.
What, and obviously the Drudge thing is a mystery to a lot of people with a lot more into having been connected than I am. So,
yeah, well, there was a long period of time where Rush and Drudge seemed to be, in lockstep,
along with Breitbart.
Right.
Rush, Drudge. Right. This is what would happen. This is what got Trump the nomination. If you want to know why Ted Cruz lost the nomination, and Ted Cruz would be philosophically going back to 2015. I mean, a lot has happened since then, but take yourself back to 2015. Ted Cruz would be philosophically the choice of Breitbart, philosophically the choice of Limbaugh, philosophically the choice of Drudge. But those three outlets chose Trump for various reasons, and then Drudge took it on himself to really make Cruz look bad, So, so I wrote an article for Breitbart back in 2015. I said the winner of the Republican nomination will be the winner of the talk radio Drudge Breitbart primary. I said whoever those outlets choose to back will win. Now, I thought that person would beat Cruz at that point. Trump was not even in the race at that point. But then, when he came in, that everything changed.
And going back to 2015, 2016, and this was when many of the national mainstream media outlets were declaring the possibility that we were seeing a libertarian moment, because you had the rise of and of course, a lot of it was a diversion. They were trying to obviously extricate as many votes as they could away from the GOP and away from Trump as they possibly could. But there was a lot of focus given at the time to Rand Paul. There was one article in particular declared him the most interesting man in politics in America. And then there was all of these articles that were centered around him and Justin Amash, Thomas Massey, talking about the libertarian moment. And then, of course, the Libertarian Party was expected to have its best outing ever because of the disdain for the two major party candidates and all this other stuff. But one of the things that used to make me crazy, and I'm bringing this back to Rush, and even though but Drudge had a big part in this as well, because I think Drudge was a lot more libertarian than he was conservative. He just knew where
I agree.
He knew where his bread was being buttered, right? And he was giving a lot of attention to that libertarian moment as well. But Rush would make me crazy, and this is when I started really getting angry with him. Was that when the polls would come out, a new poll would be released or composite of the poll, or the Real Clear Politics or whatever, and it would be Trump #1 and Cruz #2, and then Rand would be #3, and then Rush would read the poll down, so he would read the top 5 or top 10, and he would just skip over Rand's name. I'm looking at the same newspaper article. Oh, absolutely. And he would ignore him. He would not mention
that
him.
was 4 years after my time. I can't tell you.
Oh no, I know. But this is when I lost. I started really getting angry and I would write when he would do that. I would write about it, and it was, he just really, of course, he never liked either one of the Pauls. Now, interestingly enough, in Rush's final several shows, oh my gosh, I mean, he was praising Rand Paul, all the time, because of Rand's, obviously his activities of late have been certainly more in line with Rush's thinking, and particularly Rand's defenses of Trump's legal arguments as it relates to related to the impeachment, that sort of thing. But so that's when I was really, really having a hard time with Limbaugh myself, was when he began, and again, it's one thing to be up the GOP's butt 100% of the time, and it's one thing to be up the Trump's ass 100% of the time. But then when he would literally just leave out information, okay, well then he was doing some of the same things that we accuse the mainstream press of doing as well, but he was totally focused 100% on making sure that Trump won that election, and he wasn't going to give any
He did. He changed in 2015. I often wondered how I would have handled that had I still been involved, behind the scenes, because I didn't change in 2015.
Right.
So I philosophically had a lot of problems with the show 2015, 2016 as well. So,
yeah. And we talked about that a lot. Now let's go back. Let's go back to your time though, contributing to the Limbaugh program and indeed the Limbaugh legacy. You said that you had a couple of analogies or funny moments that were your favorite moments, maybe not the biggest moments in terms of affecting the national dialogue, but your favorite moments. Give me a couple of those.
Well, one thing, I had a one-liner that Rush he used after Obama won the Nobel Prize, which happened shortly after Obama blew the Chicago Olympics. He was going to secure the Olympics for Chicago, he and Michelle, and they bombed on that. Then shortly after that, he won the Nobel Prize, which was obviously ridiculous. So I wrote the comment that Rush used, that not sure what's more embarrassing, losing the Olympics or winning the Nobel Prize. So Chris Matthews tweeted that and made that one go viral. The Fort Hood analogy, that was obviously a tragedy. Obviously a terrorist attack in America. Major Hassan, killed 13 or 14 soldiers. And the day after that, Obama and some general named Casey were down at Fort Hood, and they were walking around Fort Hood just confounded as to what in the world caused this workplace violence. Can't figure out what happened here. So they're just walking around there, and there was something familiar about the mindset of Obama and Casey. It was really bothering me, and I couldn't figure out what it was. So this is it's in the middle of Rush's show, and then it hit me. They're walking around acting like these damn stupid parents at a no-score league Little League game. One of these games where they proudly don't keep score, and the parents are up there congratulating themselves, and nobody knows the score. And little Johnny over there got to swing 48 times before he finally hit one, because we don't strike out and all that. And they're congratulating themselves on this. Of course, Steve, the kids know what the damn score is.
Yeah.
Every kid in the dugout knows how many people cross home plate for both teams. They know what the score is. And
being a parent during that era, I can tell you that if the kid didn't know, they would sneak over to the parents and go, "Dad, what's the score?"
Yeah, but the fathers knew what the score was, and the kids knew what the score was. But, the kids in the dugout were the Fort Hood soldiers, and they knew what the damn score was. The score was Jihadis 13, Fort Hood nothing. They knew what the score was. Right. And so I ripped that analogy off just during a media timeout, and emailed it to my source, and she emailed it back and said, "Is this yours?" I said, "Absolutely." And Rush used it and did a great job with it, as you would expect, within like 2 minutes. So that was the Fort Hood no score league thing.
Any other one real quick?
I think my favorite one was during the Obama stash days. You remember the they had these people lined up in Detroit to get some sort of free handout if they had
right.
under $24,000 a couple or under $16,000 an individual income. And the lady that went viral, interviewed by a TV station in Detroit, talking about the Obama stash. I'm gonna get me the Obama stash. So it was the Obama. Anyway, it was a Detroit newspaper, Free Press, I think, did a big story on it. And they were talking about what this Obama cash was and who qualified. And it was like, and for couples making $24,000 or less, or individuals making $16,800 or less. And at the same time, Charlie Rangel was under investigation for tax fraud. he had forgotten to report that Virgin Island rental property income. I think it was somewhere in the Caribbean.
Right.
So I interjected into the story after the $16,000, $24,000 cutoff. I said, which I think means Charlie Rangel qualifies for all the income he remembers, to do that. So I wove the Charlie Rangel story in with the Obama stash story, which was one of the things I think Rush really liked, is I would weave two or three things in together like that.
Which is the kind of thing that he does and does.
Which is the kind of thing that he does, which when he was, as I heard him do that story during the day, because I knew what the punchline was, I could tell he couldn't wait to get to the punchline. Now, you wouldn't notice it if you don't know what the punchline is, but I could tell he was waiting to get to the punchline. Of course, he delivered it perfectly, and it was a great bit. So
now let's go directly to the end of this relationship. All right. So tell me what happened. We've talked a little bit. We did a podcast here back. It's been almost a year ago now, but sometime early on in the COVID thing, talking about the early ramifications, what was going on with COVID-19 and the government's response to that. And then we spent a little bit of time on your relationship with Limbaugh then. But the one thing we didn't get into was, how did this thing come to a crashing halt?
Well, it had been a little over 2 years, and I had more fun than I'd ever had doing anything in my life. I had more impact on big issues than anything I'd ever done in my life. It was a dadgum blast, I think you even had fun vicariously for me.
Oh, I had fun just, because as you know, in my career, or at least the career I used to have pre-COVID, I work from home as well. So I had the opportunity to sit at home and listen to the radio as I work. And that was for quite a long period of time, that was an interesting side, little piece of entertainment in my own life, was to watch what was happening with you and with Rush as that developed and transpired.
Yeah. And, I'm very proud of the work I did there. It was good. It was funny. It was insightful. I think everything I did probably stands the test of time. It was bittersweet, as any ghostwriter will tell you. It always is. That's just the nature of the beast, but you do it for the sweet part. And what I felt happening was that my contact might lose her gig, because she was not a fan of the new woman in Rush's life, who ended up is now the widow,
Right.
So she thought she was going to lose her deal, which of course meant I would lose my deal. But it also meant Rush would probably be looking for someone else to fill that. He did all his own show prep in first 12, 15 years. There was 3 newspapers, 3 networks, CNN and C-SPAN, and that was it.
Right.
And so he really did. So, I don't think he had a bit of help for 15 years, but after a while, the media grew, the internet grew, and no one person can see everything. And that's where this person came in. And that's what I helped, just get another set of eyes, who could help feed this. So I thought he'd probably want to continue with someone else if the new Mrs. Limbaugh forced a change on the staff here. And I had done 2.5 years for free and felt like I had earned my stripes. So I did a creative end run to make some contacts, and ended up just having some pretty condescending phone calls with his attorney, a very reputable attorney firm out of Florida. But I threw the Hail Mary. I knew it might get intercepted, but I felt like it might be coming to an end anyway with things out of my control. So
yeah, but
it also ruined my relationship with my contact, and I sent her a condolence email today, and it went through. So apparently that email address is still good. Because I know this was devastating to her and her husband because they were friends, for life.
Right. Well, lifetime friends. But you, as I recall, back in, so this was 2010?
2011.
11. So yeah, I remember exactly where I was. I was standing in the parking lot at a golf club in Durham, North Carolina. And I had a couple hours to kill, and you and I spent quite a bit of time on the phone at that time. And I was encouraging you to go for it. Just you need to go ahead. And if this is coming to an end, at least make the effort to let Rush know who it is that has been feeding him this information for the last 2.5 years.
He clearly knew what I did and what this other person did. There was some overlap, but there was a very different flavor to what I did and what she did.
But did you ever find out if the same guy who he used to read, word for word, your articles from the American Thinker, used to read your articles down, maybe not the entire article, but how he would do at least, the first 2 or 3 paragraphs, the pertinent points. And then he would riff on that. But the same guy that would read C. Edmund Wright's articles in American Thinker, did he ever know that was the same voice that he was getting fed about Santelli, the Tea Party, the, Fort Hood, blah, blah, blah?
I never could determine that. I kind of thought, 50-50 maybe, and so I never could determine that. I certainly wanted him to know that,
Yeah.
I wanted him to know that, these 15 things that you loved and these 4 articles that you quoted, it's all the same person, I said I'm thinking he had to know that at some point in 2008, the whole flavor of his show prep changed, or at least there was an additional flavor, in his menu. And he had to know it was a new person and the same new person. He had to know that.
Yeah. And you also do or do not know that he ever got the package or ever saw the package that you sent in your attempt to make a direct.
I don't know what he saw. Both
Snerdley received it, right?
Yeah, we went to his house.
Yeah. So it was FedEx and he had to sign for it, right?
Yeah. So, but the only person I ever talked to was the attorney. So
that was it.
Yep. You there?
I am here and I hear you, but your video has blinked out. Are you still with me?
Hello.
Yeah. Can you not hear me? Can you not hear me? Testing 1 2 1 2 1 2 1. I'm going to send him a note real quick and let him sign back in while I continue to ramble here for a moment. And I might actually tell or talk about a couple stories. There you are. You're back.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. You did a little blank out on me there. I was going to ramble, but you just saved everyone from hearing me ramble for a few minutes as I was going to contact you and say, just log back in. Yeah. But so you know that Snerdley accepted the package, but you don't know that it was ever forwarded through. So you have no idea at this point.
No, I don't know. All I know is a few days after that, I heard from a very famous attorney firm in Miami.
That was it. And the terms of that response were?
Well, the terms of the response were
back off.
Well, no, they were obviously worried about that, which I never threatened any of. I mean, just talk about the paranoid world. And look, maybe if you're in his shoes, you are paranoid. So I'm not going to make a judgment.
Yeah. Right.
But it was sort of like pretended like none of this ever happened, and then I hit them with some more information, and it was like, okay, it happened, but we're still not interested. Okay. Which I don't know why. I was very unthreatening. I was very positive, very humble, very creative, very creative, but that's not the easiest person to get in contact with, by the way.
No.
In fact, maybe one of the hardest.
Notoriously private to begin with, and when
for good reason.
And when his 3 hours was over, he was done. He had no intention of extending himself out beyond that. Although I did, I read probably a dozen different tributes today, and one of the ones that I read was Shanklin's tribute, the editor of Cigar Aficionado, and about Rush's ongoing commitment to their charities, that they did every year, and at least two a year that Rush would participate in, and was very generous and giving both his time and otherwise. But he also reemphasized how notoriously private Rush was, and although they had an incredibly close personal relationship, he said just in text data alone, just the amount of text that they wrote would be the equivalent of about a 600-page book that they in their relationships, which began in 1994. And
wow,
and he as I said, reemphasized how incredibly private Rush was otherwise, but he would show up for the events and he would keep his commitments, and he would be very generous at the event itself. But when it was time to go, he got the hell out of there.
I can only imagine, to be that controversial, to be that famous, I can't imagine what a day in his shoes would be like.
Right. And now, speaking of controversial, okay, so you and I knew that this was going to happen. And you know what this is, what social media was going to do to Rush today. We knew. Yeah. I'm just going to read. I'm only going to read two of what have to be millions of comments today. And these are just a couple that came across my own feed. All right. Rush Limbaugh was a shitty, cynical person who did everything he could to make the world meaner, dumber, and more divided. I'm glad he's dead, and I wish it had happened a lot sooner. Okay, that's one. Second one, and these are not even the worst that I've read today. I think you tried to stay away from this, didn't you?
I didn't try to stay. I stayed away from it.
You did stay away from it. Well, I took the blow for you. It's easy to make fun of Rush Limbaugh right now, but it's important to remember that he also brought a lot of people a lot of joy by dying. How about that?
It's interesting, because I'm gonna say I probably donated $500,000 worth of work to him, basically.
Yeah.
And he,
as a professional writer,
treated me very poorly. And all of that's unbelievable. I've remained to the last day a huge fan of his, a big supporter of what he did. And all he did was love the country and just have a really good way of talking about that and telling you why you should love it too.
Yeah, it's been one of the more entertaining aspects of what I've read today have been how many people called him a racist, white nationalist, white supremacist. I mean, that's a prevailing theme on the social media, Twitter, Facebook threads today, and yet his own chief of staff, Bo Snerdley, who says, gave him a very short tribute. He said, Rush, I love you and always will. Essentially what Bo posted today, and Bo's as black can be.
And Bo has been paid 7 figures as Rush's number one man for many years.
Yeah.
Many years.
That's not exactly what a white nationalist, white supremacist would do.
No.
Either employ, engage, continue to give cred to that guy every single day and he made him his official Obama. What did he used to call him? The Obama critic or whatever, something like that.
Yeah.
He gave him an acronym, and the official Obama critic, and he would allow Bo to come on and criticize as the House black guy. So after I read, and like I said, I took these slings and arrows for you, Edmund, so you didn't have to do this today. But suddenly something dawned on me, and I just wrote just these few words down just for me to have, because it's probably going to go somewhere in an article of my own later on. But I said, because of the tidal wave of comments about Rush Limbaugh's passing on my personal social media feeds, I'm being forced to ask them and myself one simple question. What percentage of my own political beliefs must align with your own so that you don't also wish me dead and burning in hell?
Yeah.
I mean, because essentially, as I read this, and here's a follow-up question I wrote. I said, if I don't meet your standard, should I take that as a threat? Because already in the culture that we're in right now, we are facing, obviously the deplatforming, the shadow banning, the cancel culture that's happening to voices from the right, liberty voices, libertarian voices, conservative voices. We know what's happening. We know that those of us, look, as a libertarian, I was on the front line years and years and years and years and years ago saying, yeah, gay marriage, I'm cool with that. I think you're stupid. Don't, why do you want to subject yourself to what, I've had to go through as a heterosexual person, legally, that why do you want that? Okay. Yeah. If you want it, fine. I'm totally on your side. You're stupid. But that was always my take on it. And the same thing as it relates to race. Anybody that knows anything about who we are as libertarians knows that we don't give a shit. We don't care. We don't look at the color. All we look at is the value of what your contribution is to the project that I'm working on at the time. It has nothing to do. And for me as a musician, I never hired based on color. Never happened one single time as a band leader or as a band manager in all the years that I've worked.
The dirty little secret is that, I mean, that's how most conservatives, operate as well.
But see, but you're in your business. You've employed hundreds of people in your career, hundreds of people over the years, and you hire based on production.
Yeah,
not skin color. Yeah, and so that's how we feel about it. But the way we're being characterized right now, and the way that I saw Rush characterized right now, which you and I both know is not true, and these are people who obviously have never listened to his show, or they couldn't possibly have have drawn those conclusions about him, but. At the end of the day, as I look at these things this one question I wrote, what percentage of my own political beliefs must align with your own so that you don't also wish me dead and burning in hell? Because that's what they wished for him. They wished either that they could have done it themselves, that they could have accelerated it themselves, that they could have made it happen sooner themselves. And that's where they're putting us right now into. So they either want us deprogrammed, or they want us into a re-education camp, or they want us canceled.
Well, and this goes back to Charlottesville. And I remember thinking at the time, because Rush is a white supremacist because they tie him to Trump, even though Rush was around for 28 years on the radio before Trump got into politics. And even though Trump, big friends of Herschel Walker, and used to be big friends with Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, but suddenly, he didn't say about Charlottesville what they said he said about Charlottesville, but he did not handle it very well either. Steve Bannon didn't handle it very well either. But that is now metastasized, Steve, as to all conservatives are racist. That's now where we are.
Yeah, but the mainstream media has made that so because they
mainstream and social media. Yeah,
they refuse to carry the full part of that. Some good people. There's some good people in that crowd, or whatever the exact quote was, and they refuse to carry the entire context of that quote, where Trump was incredibly critical of those. They used Trump. They used a trait of Trump's against him, and that is
Trump had and I don't know why, but Trump has a little bit of a insecurity problem, and he just was really hard to hesitate. It was hard for him to criticize anyone who was for him.
But it was but it's the same thing that they've done about the BLM and rights. It's the exact same thing that they've done for a year now, or since last summer, since George Floyd's death. Is that it's mostly peaceful. Well, Trump didn't even say it was a mostly non-racist rally. He just said that there were some good people, but he also said that it was a bad group of people, but involved with them were some good, there was a few good people too.
Yeah.
That's literally proportionally the opposite of what we've been told about the other situation.
I know.
But it's because of that lie that we've gotten to this point now where they want us dead, and that's why I'm asking that question. So when you read this vitriol, this hatred, and I mean, and again, if we're talking about social media and their rules, their community standards, we're talking about people wishing the worst possible, vile, painful acts that could be performed on a human in the afterlife at this point. Why aren't they being pulled down?
Well, you know why. I mean, it's they're the Khmer Rouge and we're in the Gulag.
Well, yeah, there we are. All right, so let's. I said we were going to stay on Rush here, and we kind of I actually, it's my fault that we diverted a little bit, but the bottom line from what I want to get from you to close this thing out is that you didn't get everything that you wished you had gotten from that relationship that you had.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Right. You actually even never met him personally.
That's correct.
Right. But he used your words for, almost 3 years. If there was one thing that you could do differently in this entire process that you thought you may have changed the trajectory of that relationship, or maybe even secured a more solid, maybe even a financial relationship, maybe even an ongoing relationship that would have lasted up until, today, to his passing, what would you have done differently?
There's only one thing I could have done differently, and that would have been to do nothing and hope that the tension between my contact and Rush's girlfriend, who was becoming his fiance, just hope that tension passed. And actually, I don't know whether that prep relationship is still continued, through the end of his show or not. I don't know. The show changed a little bit. I mean, the show evolved over years the way any show has to. And I have a very good feel for how prep was done up through 2011. I don't have much of a feel for how it was done after that. I don't know if this person continued her relationship and whether there was any way to do it. I had laid it on the line for 2.5 years for free. I could not continue that forever with no reward. I mean, I just couldn't. My other businesses suffered. That was a sacrifice I was willing to make for a while, but only for a while.
Yeah. And have you considered telling this story in greater detail, either in written form or book form or in some other expository way?
Usually when you bring it up.
when I bring it up, yeah, because I've encouraged you to do so, but you have your reasons for not doing it. But now that he's not here now.
Yeah, something may happen with it. I think you have to respect the timing and everything, and and people are going to judge your motives for doing it. Okay, maybe they're right. I did what I did. I contributed what I contributed. Was happy to do it. Okay, maybe I want a few people to know. Does that make me a bad person? I don't know. So clearly I'm a racist and a white supremacist. We've already established that.
Right. Well, obviously. You have to, no question. So let's close this thing out by, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody what you and I are now working on?
Well, we have been working on it, and really, when did we first talk about this?
We started talking about this over 6 months. I mean, maybe 8 months ago. I keep saying 6 months, but I keep forgetting that we're now almost into, frickin' March of 2021.
Yeah, we're almost a year from the start of the lockdowns.
Right.
So for 10 months maybe we've been talking about this, and we've been communicating with each other since the beginning, and we've been simpatico since the beginning. You and my wife and a couple of my employees and a few others from my church and so on and Steve Dace has been excellent on this since day one, and he and I have communicated. And my whole thing has been this is a scamdemic, proportional scamdemic. That there is no mathematical justification for destroying our country, destroying our economy. So months ago, I reserved the URL. I haven't done anything with it because we're still, working on this project. But I reserved the URL, thescamdemicbook.com. And so obviously you and I are working on The Scamdemic Book, and the working title is either Scamdemic or The Scamdemic Book, how the left destroyed liberty and the nation, or something along those. Yeah.
And between the two of us, we probably have 400,000 words written already, but this all has.
Yeah, this is an editing down project at this point.
Right. Yeah. It really is. And so it's now a matter of putting it in a readable format that.
Yeah, and I've got some ideas about that came to me today that we can discuss off air. But what I want it to be, I want this to be, and that's why I got the URL, The Scamdemic Book. I want this to be The Scamdemic Book.
The book, right.
And I want it to be for a lot of reasons, but I definitely want it to be the one that you hold up and say, see, and I want, and we can give them probably 500 moments like that in this book.
You've been really great on the politics of this thing, and whereas I've spent a lot more time on the math and the science and the data, and that's kind of why we felt like that this would be a good combo for us.
Where we overlap is the math.
Yeah, right.
The math for the politics, you combine the math and the science, and like I said, and obviously this whole story wasn't even put into perspective until a few days after January 6th, when we realized, because that was when they really decided they're just going to totally steal the country, steal the internet, steal media, steal social media. And that goes back to what this whole thing was started to get rid of Trump, and it's gone. They've had a lot more success with the compliance and the sheep of the citizenry. We found out how math stupid the country is. It's post math America, Steve, because
it is.
Even just the basic feel for statistics, for ratios, for numbers. You realize that the scamdemic is a scamdemic, and you realize the election is a fraud because there's certain obvious basic third grade mathematical principles that prove both of those.
Right. Now I did wait to use my 5th grade division skills to figure this thing out, but that was exactly where it was 5th grade math that.
Well, that was Louisiana. That'd be 3rd grade.
Yeah, well, that's true. Well, we had a saying down in Louisiana that if it wasn't for Mississippi, we'd be last at everything. So.
Hey,
there we go. So anyway,
we know that you people in Louisiana altered Shaquille O'Neal's transcript downward so no out-of-state school would recruit him. I mean, we know how y'all do that.
Yeah, but the best story was the Chiefs story. You know who I'm talking about, from Boston Celtics. Who was the Chief?
Parrish.
Robert Parrish. The best story was Parrish's story because he wanted to stay close to mom. So he went to a little liberal arts college in Shreveport, like 1,200 students on the centenary. And Louisiana required the ACT test, not the SAT. And so centenary required a score of a 24 on the ACT test. And Parrish scored a 4 on it. And so they violated their own rules by giving him, admission to the school so that they could have him on the basketball team. And so for all 4 years, the only 4 years that Centenary has ever showed up in the rankings of, the AP, UPI, polls, the only time they've ever been permitted to be on the rankings was when Robert Parrish was there on the court playing for them, and deservedly so. But they were forbidden to play in postseason because they had violated their own rules. But both Parrish and the school accepted that and went forward with it because they wanted him and he wanted to stay close to mom.
Yep. Then he was with the Celtics, and the rest is history. So
there you go. Yeah. And he went to the same school with Terry Bradshaw, Woodlawn High School, Joe Ferguson. Remember Ferguson for the Buffalo Bills? And yeah, it was quite a little era there.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah. So anyway, so we've diverted away from Rush, and let's close this thing out. Obviously, I want everyone to do all the normal things. All the information is below. So wherever this is posted, all the information that you need as far as making contacts with us, supporting us, all of those things are down in the dialogue below this video. So that's all we need to say about that. We don't need to do anything else except, once again, God bless. Thank you, Edmund, for hanging out with me tonight for a little while and giving and consenting to doing this with me tonight, as opposed to waiting until you felt better about it, but and having thought through it. But I appreciate it. And by the way, I just finished somebody else's manuscript today on their book, so tomorrow it begins.
All right, good. Yeah, I'll be in touch overnight. So
yeah, absolutely. So Rush, Godspeed. Thank you for all the years, and God bless.
Amen.
Thank you.